Hello everyone, and thanks for joining me on another episode of the History Fuzz podcast. We're going to explore the astronomical secrets of Jordan's ancient monuments with Dr. Antonio César González-Garcia, President of the European Society for Astronomy and Culture since 2017. With a PhD in astrophysics and extensive fieldwork across Europe and the Near East, Dr. González-Garcia reveals how celestial alignments and sacred landscapes influenced the creation of iconic sites like the Petra Treasury. I'd like you to outline the southern Levant, emphasizing why Jordan is the ideal location for studying the evolution of orientation traditions.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question because what we call today the Levant is made out of very different environments. And of course, you may have settings next to the sea, riverbeds, mountains, valleys, everything. But in particular, the southern part of the Levant, it is one of the areas in the Mediterranean where you have certain characteristics that makes it very interesting for any kind of study. It is located in a relatively high plateau where you have different given conditions, climatic and hydrologic and so on. And at the same time, it is within the Levant, it is within what is called the Fertile Crescent, but it's in the outskirts of this part, right? So you have things that can be understood from studying other areas, but at the same time, it is a perfect so to say, laboratory for many ideas. And of course, at the same time, it is in a spot that is been crossroad for millennia. Ideas, people, goods coming from, say, Africa, Arabia, the other parts of Asia, they come together in this part. So you have a relevant spot where you have things that may have happened directly from scratch over here, as many things, for instance, in the Neolithic, but also many influences from many other areas. So in this case, in the area of orientations and cultural astronomy and so on, this is a perfect place for investigating how, on the course of time, the orientations have changed or not according to different traditions.
Caesar, in 2019, I was filming on Mount Horeb at the Tomb of Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed something there. When we were on that mountaintop and looking east, west, north, or south,
yeah,
an infinite, endless rolling of linear hilltops. And what I thought to myself was, if anybody attempting to do an astronomical measurement up here would have not just a notch and a hill in front of them, but perhaps 7 or 8 hills that form different forms of foresight. So the options for accuracy were endless. Would you agree with that the Jordan landscape is particularly well suited for archaeoastronomy?
Yes. In a sense, it is. I mean, what you say is true. This feeling of different landscapes and different depths of the landscape.
Yeah, and colors.
Yeah. No, the colors are amazing. I mean, especially when you're in Petra, is one of the areas where you have these amazing and gorgeous colors of the rock, and that's something fantastic. Something that, for instance, also happens in northern parts of Saudi Arabia as well. Yeah, it's true, and especially the area where you were in Mount Haron. It is one of the focus points for many sightlines happening from the main site of Petra going into or looking into Mount Haron. And this is one of the reasons we. Of course, there are many reasons. I'm not claiming that astronomy has the explanation for everything, but it's one of the reasons that how you see things from a particular spot makes this place particularly important for the people that then brings this place to be a sacred site or whatever they thought it was. Yeah.
I'd like you to describe your approach to the 2011 field campaign, perhaps focusing on data collection from Neolithic monuments, Bronze Age temples, Iron Age Nabataean structures. You seem to have endless layers of archaeology there. How did you even start in 2011?
Wow, yeah. Well, yeah, as you say, the idea was to try to gather as a comprehensive set of data as we could, so that at the end we had diachronic sense of orientations in this area, in this particular spot. This was something that we had tried some years before in just in one town or the neighborhoods of this town in Spain, in Mérida,
yep,
where we also have megalithic monuments and Bronze Age, Iron Age sites. Then we have the Roman stuff, the Christian and Muslims and so on. So we thought, okay, this is a very particular area. This is a particular spot in Spain. What if we do it on a larger scale, in a completely different environment, with the different cultural inputs, and see if we can reproduce this kind of study, this diachronic view of the orientations, and see how the mind of the people that looks into the landscape and the including the sky, they may have understood what is going on there and what they reflected in the orientations of the monuments. To do that, we try to include within our campaign as many monuments from different epochs as we could. Of course, there are many of them that they are underrepresented because we didn't have time and no resources to do everything. But I think we got a quite representative sample so that we could grasp particular changes and maintenance of orientations along time.
What was the oldest building or structure that you measured with astronomical relevance in its orientation?
Yeah, this was, there were two sites, Babedra and Derala, and they are from say, Bronze Age. Of course, I mean, one of the things that we should remember is that here we are at one of the areas where the Neolithic is one of the oldest sites on Earth, where you have Neolithic agriculture, cattle herding, building of huts and everything. So one may think, okay, Bronze Age is not that an issue there, but it is actually. One of the things that one should remember is that, of course, in this area we had Neolithic sites and so on, but there are changes along time. I mean, once you get to have a stable population living in what we might think it is a kind of town or city, we tend to think that this is how they will remain forever. But no, in this area, what you see is that some of them, probably out of choice or due to changing conditions in the environment or something, they reversed to nomadic people, and then they came back to, say, more stable and building cities and so on. This is one of the things that I was saying before, that being on a liminal space between, say, the desert and a more fertile area, this is a perfect place for understanding these kind of changes. And in this case, these sites, Babedra and Derala, they have more than 6,000 years old, some of them. So they are quite old. They are quite old, even if they are Bronze Age. The oldest remains that you have there, they are quite old. But the main site and the main temples that we were measuring there, they are much later. They are like, say, 2000 BC or something like this.
Okay, going back to those 4000 BC sites, what was the primary orientation of those sites? Was it towards a specific moment in the sun cycle, the lunar cycle, a celestial cycle, planetary? What was it primarily orientated towards?
Yeah. Again, this is a very tricky question.
I never said it would be easy, Cesar.
No. I'm glad that it's not easy. Now, the nice thing is that I can tell you, both temples, both sites, they are facing more or less what one would say. One is facing east, the other one is facing west. One would say, okay, this might be related to the sun, or why not? One could be the rising sun on the equinox. The other one is the setting sun close to the equinox. But there is a problem there, and is that we don't have so much number to say, okay, this is going to be the sun. Also, the moon is going to be doing things around this area as well, different times of the year. So it is, with this little number, it is very difficult, not to say impossible, without further information to say, okay, this is going to be the sun, or this is going to be the moon. Interesting thing is that in some cases, not in these ones, but in some cases, you also have information from the material remains in the site, saying, okay, these people were following the moon. Imagine that they may have, because we don't have scripts from this time, but we may have petroglyphs, or we may have the remains that they have left there. We may have necklaces or something like this, earrings with the shape of a moon, for example. Then you may think, okay, the moon was important for these people, so it might be that the orientation was linked to the moon. This is one point. The other point is that in many of these societies, so to say, the time reckoning, we don't know if they had a time reckoning system, but if they had, it was most probably had to do with the moon happening, something related with the sun. This is something that has happened in many cultures across the globe, and in particular in the Mediterranean, where you have that, okay, the full moon following a spring equinox is the right moment to do something, okay?
Yeah.
And this moon is going to be next to these orientations. So one might think, okay, this could be something related here.
Do you think it's perhaps something much, much simpler? And what I mean by that, Cesar, is, have you considered that perhaps the east and west alignments identify something that was maybe cosmologically significant or had mythological function, and it perhaps had nothing to do with the stars whatsoever?
I think there is a contradiction in the question in itself. I mean, when you say that the meaning is cosmological, how would you detach the cosmological part from the sky?
Okay, can I give you an example of that?
Yeah, please, yes.
Say there was an underwater river. Say there was a wind that had a tendency from going east to west. Say there was a cave in the west that they thought the progenitor for their lineage came from. So you're right. Cosmology, I should change that word for saying terrestrial mythological functions.
No, you're right. And in many cases, you are not able to say, okay, this is pure chance. I mean, with just say one or two cases, it's going to be impossible for you to say, okay, unless, as I said before, you have further data
Yeah, material artifacts.
Yeah. I mean, you always have to take the material culture into account, and the background, and the cultural background where these elements are built and used at the time. And if you have this information, besides, it is going to be, I would say, unfair not to use it. So in the case, for example, that you say that, okay, you have something in the east that is not related to the sunrise or whatever. Yeah, you're right, perfectly. No problem with that. It could be that. But the thing is that the fact that you have this cave or this something, it doesn't rule out the possibility that on top of that, you could see the sun sanctioning this direction. Okay, this direction that is important, look, is very important also because the sun is rising on this particular direction. And this is something that we have seen that happens in many places. For instance, in Petra, with Jebel Harum. On top of Jebel Harum, you have been there. There is this Muslim tomb where before that there was a Byzantine monastery, and before that there was this has been a sacred spot for ages. But at the same time, from Petra, you had many places that are directed to this mountain, not only to the mountain or to the sacred space, but also because in that direction, particular moment of the year, important for the people in Petra, the sun was setting. So both things mount together, and they are coupled. So I wouldn't say, okay, this has to be just one or the other. Of course, in many cases, you are not able to say, okay, and this is one of the motivations for this kind of research, by the way, because one of the things that you see in many cases is that orientations have to do with religion, to put it simple.
Yes.
Okay? Religion is one of the most conservative pieces of mind that human has ever created. I mean, once you have something that works, you keep it, unless it starts to not working. No? So if you have an orientation that is going to be working for something and is related to, say, some religious, cultural aspect of your society, there must be something very important to change this direction where you are facing, where you're praying or whatever. This is why we try to do this diachronic study. Are these epochs, for example, the Bronze Age, where we have little data, completely different from the following epochs that we have on the same geographical background? And what we see is that, for instance, in this case, that we have these two orientations that could be, I would say just could be, related to something on the east-west. Let's say the east-west direction is the important part here.
Yeah. Then
we come to the next sites that we were looking for in temporal terms. They are the dolmens in Jordan. There are plenty, hundreds of dolmens all across Jordan. And when we consider all of them together, most of them, but more than 80% of them, they are open inside what we call the lunisolar range. So to say, where you see the sun rising and sun setting, with particular concentrations next to this east-west direction.
Yeah.
So, okay, now we have a more database or data-driven case where you have plenty of data and you can extract from that. Of course, it's a different society, but as I said, they are living on the same spot, and probably they are related to the ones from the cities that we were considering before. So, of course, it's a big if, but this if they are related, both directions could back up each other.
Yeah.
Okay. And in this sense, it's giving you more base to say, okay, the other directions could be also related to the sun or moon or something on the sky.
Yeah, the probability of your speculations being accurate is increased.
Yes.
If just returning momentarily to those two original sites, the oldest, you said they were oriented east and west. Do you mean the actual structures were open to the east and west, or they were located on an east to west alignment?
No, they are open. Both of them, one is open to the east and the other one is open to the west, and they are on completely different spots. I mean, one is next to the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
It's on a high hill on top of it, and is facing the Dead Sea, and the other one is on another spot completely different.
The reason I struggle with equinox, while the solstices were exceptionally relevant because one could see the sun stopping for 3 days, nothing actually happens on the equinox, but
Yes.
more so, César, it's an exceptionally mathematical concept, the equinox, that doesn't
Exactly.
happen for 3 days. It happens at an instant of time that you might not even be able to see the sun at that moment.
Yes. Exactly. No, yeah, or even the sun might be high up in the sky, and this is the right moment. Yeah, no, that's completely true, and nothing wrong with that. No, when I'm saying this is why I was saying that you are not able to say this is the sun is important. For instance, when you say, of course, the equinox, but what we mean today by equinox is the definition given by the Greeks in the 3rd century BC.
Yeah.
Where they say, okay, when the sun crosses the equator, the celestial equator, then is the equinox. But of course, if you go to other societies, they may have, and they have, different meanings. For instance, the same word equinox is the same length of the night as the day. But if you go to see when this happens, it's not going to be on the equinox. It's going to be either spring or autumn. Is going to be a few days before or a few days after the astronomical definition of equinox.
There you go.
And there might be other definitions of equinox. For example, you might say, as you indicated, yeah, you have the solstices, which are quite easy to define, because you see the sun is changing direction over the horizon. But at the same time, you need to be very precise and accurate to say, okay, today is the solstice and not tomorrow. Because it has to be a very particular kind of landscape where you can see particular spots, and also the atmospheric condition is going to be affecting how you see this the disk of the sun and everything. Today it might be more humid, and then the sun is going to be something. It's going to do something on the horizon. But if it is drier, then it's going to be completely different observational conditions, and the sun is going to do something slightly different, but so important that it might change what you consider the solstice to be. So, in this sense, you could also define equinox as the moment that happens in between the two solstices. Okay.
Yeah.
Or in space, you can say, okay, I have the solstice over this mountain, and the winter solstice over this mountain, the summer solstice on this valley. More or less in the middle, I would say that I have an equinox. All these definitions, we have seen that they have been working in different cultures and conditions. But at the same time, it is important to see that what the moon is doing, because the moon is one of the things that we see that, for example, not only for time reckoning, but also in religious sphere, is always very important. And the moon is going to do something that is slightly different than the sun. And when you take this into account, then everything is just madness, because if it is difficult to understand and follow the sun, the moon is going to be even more difficult.
Yes, indeed. Going back to what you first said about the solstice and which of the 3 days it actually hit, this is the reason the Incas boxed the sun with 2 pillars from their viewing platform at the island of the sun. So the hierarchy are watching the setting winter solstice sun between 2 pillars. And the pillars are only 15 meters apart. So the sun's going to clip a pillar the day before, but on that central day of the solstice, not only can the hierarchy see that happening, but on the same alignment behind them, thousands and thousands of farmers and craftspeople and manufacturers from lower ends of society would also see that same hierophany. In Khmer, Cambodia, they didn't actually target the equinox on the horizons. Their temples would act as foresights. The people would stand in the west, and they were oriented so when the sun came off the horizon, maybe an hour into the air, they visually crowned those temples. But this is where I'm going, Cesar. So there was a real effort placed in prehistory to achieve cardinality and linearity. Can you define a moment in time in Jordan where monumentality was expressed with cardinality, north to south, east to west temples, to with an astronomical accuracy, not just a symbolic accuracy, but when were they really tight?
Yeah. Oh, this is difficult because
never said it was going to be easy, Cesar.
Yeah. No, I mean the orientations were changing along time. As I said, for instance, the case of the dolmens is the first moment where you have many orientations that they might be similar ones to the other. But I would say that the first time that you have monuments oriented, say, cardinally, is in the Nabataean time.
Nabataean times. When is that? Loosely, what time period?
Yeah, 1st century BC, 1st century AD. So it's at the change of the era.
Is that suggestive of skywatchers practicing precise astronomy, or a priesthood monumentalizing their understanding of astronomy? Were they calendar devices or places of worship?
I think they are both.
Okay.
I think they are both because the calendar had, first of all, a ritual component. When it is the right moment to do particular rituals, when it is the right moment to face our main god, when is the right moment to gather together, because people needs to come from different parts of the country to this place where we are going to do some pilgrimage. So they need to know when they have to start their journey to come here. But apart from this, of course, there is a time reckoning system where you have kings that they want to know that this period of time has elapsed since they are kings, and that it is the time to collect money from their people to buy whatever they need to make war or build water dams or whatever. So, but both are linked together, especially at these times. I mean, the way we use the calendar today as something purely
functional.
Yes, without any ritual implications, is something very typical from our society. Look, even 50 years ago, when I speak with my mother is over 90 years old, and she remembers many things from when she was a child, and many times she's referring to time, but referring at the same time to the saint that is being celebrated at this time, without saying this. It is the moment of Saint James. It is the moment of Saint whatever. And this is a moment. So this is something that it was even in our society not so long ago. And and this was very much so in many of these societies. The calendar, even if it was a functional device, it was mostly something ritual.
20 years ago, César, if an archaeoastronomer approached a site and said, this is probably ritual or spiritual, they got shot down. And if he said, this is calendrical and timekeeping, thumbs up, good thinking.
Yeah.
I come at it with a dualistic aspect, trying to break it down and understand it and figure out what was calendar, what was ritual, what was functional, what was ceremonial. But I keep getting told to stop that because there was much more oneness in prehistory than there is in our modern ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
How do you address that? You must be prone to looking at things in a dualistic kind of way.
Of course. I mean, my training is as a astronomer. And as an astronomer, they try to teach you that stars are this thing, and when you have a big bunch of stars, then you have a galaxy, and when you have a big bunch of galaxies, you have a cluster, and they behave like this and that, and then you categorize everything very clearly. But when you come to working with societies, with people, you need to modify this way of thinking, including the way of thinking of humanistic science, social sciences like anthropology or something like this, where you need to one thing is that when you look at the things from the outside, as we do, say, in astronomy and biology or whatever, but you can do that also with human societies, looking at the human societies from the outside. But mostly what you try to do is try to understand the motivations of the people that is doing something. And to do that, most of the times you need to take your scientific, so to say, hat and put your anthropological hat and try to be inside the society and see how they might have seen these things.
So important. And our restrictions are also there with our language. For example, I found myself at an indigenous reservation in Chia in Colombia 4 years ago, and I was all prepped and ready, and myself and my wife went into this meeting, and we were trying to get permission to film with them in their Temple of the Moon. And of course, I tried to show off by saying that I knew about Bachue, the goddess of the earth. Mm-hmm. And just so quickly, he corrected me and he said, no, it's not Bachue, the goddess of the earth that you say, it's Bachue, the goddess who is the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see the profound difference in those, in the of the earth and that is the earth? And I think that kind of explains the struggles we have from our perspective. And that's in a modern day indigenous community. Can you imagine 4,000 years ago trying to figure out the processes of these people's heads? But there always was a striving towards cardinality to try and make sense of this ball that we stand on. And I must ask you I ask everybody, I've got a real thing for meridians. I'm really into meridians, and I always ask my interviewees, can you give me an example in Jordan of a string of standing stones, or perhaps 3 temples, or a mountain with 2 temples that are on north to south orientations or alignments?
Ooh.
It would be normally the largest mountain or hill rise within an environment.
Not that I'm aware of in Jordan.
No.
Because, for instance, Mount Haron is always, as far as I recorded, seen from the east.
Yeah.
So you always face it on the west, not in the north or south. No, not in Jordan as far as I remember. There are many places in several of the dolmen fields where you may have alignments of dolmens that they are one after the other, and they are one facing each other. This is something interesting.
Oh yeah, here we go. That's actually the next question. I was going to ask you if you'd seen any evidence of strings of sites following an alignment. It's taking
Yes.
astronomical skywatching to landscape engineering.
Yes. Yeah. No, in the cases of dolmens in Jordan, this is the case. And in many of the dolmen fields, you have this, that you have a dolmen, that you go there, you're looking from the dolmen, and then you see the next one is in front of it. It might be facing slightly off the direction of the first one, but when you go to this one and you look into the direction that is facing this one, then you see the following one.
Really?
You see, so it is like following the line of the terrain, and you have the dolmens like one following the other. And once you are there, is amazing. You see it and you think, okay, they are like big herds of stones following each other like cows or something like this.
Yeah. In many other monumental landscapes, researchers have discovered ceremonial paths and ways, and you mentioned at the beginning pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider these alignments of dolmens as functioning pilgrimage systems where somebody would pass from one to the other, perhaps on the evening of an important star or planetary rising or setting?
I don't know. This is something, at least in these dolmen fields, I'm not completely sure. In other areas, for instance, I'm based in Galicia, in the northwest of Spain. And here we have some megalithic landscapes, amazing ones. Some of them, they are really fantastic because they are high up in the ground, say like 600 meters above sea level, but you are just 2 kilometers from sea. So you see the landscape is amazing and the setting is really gorgeous. But when you go there, you realize it, and you ask yourself, why on earth these people come here to build their necropolis? I mean, these are built for their ancestors. And once you are there, and we have run even simulations trying to understand this, you see that they are built on the most favorable route to cross over this land.
Okay.
So they are telling you, okay, if you're moving from here to there, then you need to go on the direction on that you see the dolmens are built. So in this sense, they are telling you, okay, movable. Just do your pilgrimage on this landscape, because this is what we were doing. I mean, we were coming here from all over the region to make a homage to our ancestors by coming here probably at particular moments of the year. And to do this, you need to follow the dolmens, because it is the easiest route to cross the land.
Wow, really?
And this is something that really brings into the studies that they are much more, the levels and the layers of understanding these landscapes, they are much more complex than we think today. I mean, they are not just placing things on the landscape as they wanted. There was a mind behind that. I mean, a mind understanding the landscape. Okay, I want to go from here to there. What is the easiest way to do it? Okay, just build your mounds along the route. And yeah.
So what you're suggesting is that these, especially there in Spain, that those megalithic structures don't just represent places of worship or where people would maybe honor past lineages, but what you're saying is they actually manifest an older hunter-gatherer landscape into time, because those way routes and where did salt come from, where did the deer come from, that's where we go fishing, this must have been a living landscape at one time before the stones.
Of course. I mean, this was a living landscape before the stones, and we know that especially in this area in northwest Spain, before the building of these dolmens, there were other smaller. They were not megalithic monuments in the sense that they were built with large stones, but they were smaller things in the landscape that they were placed very similarly. So, of course, people, even if they were already farmers, because it was in the Neolithic already, even they were already knowing their landscape. They had this there was an expression many years ago talking of the Neolithic, how do you say, luggage, like the kind of things that you need to have if you are a Neolithic people. And one of these is the understanding of your surroundings. And this comes with a particular way of understanding the surroundings. Once you have a particular for instance, economy, where you need to move from your village in the valley with the cattle to the high up grounds in summer because the pasture is there. And this is something that in the Mediterranean happens in many places, this transhumant movement of people at particular moments of the year. And we have seen that in many places here in Galicia, in Spain, this movement is linked to where you have megalithic monuments. You see? So it is not so much as going back to the hunter-gatherers, but it's also a way of understanding your landscape that you had already in the Neolithic.
I'm from the north coast of Scotland, César, and you've set my mind on flames, because what I'm thinking is it's time to look at Orkney and Caithness and the megalithic monuments, which have so many similarities with those in Spain and in Ireland. These were all loosely the same emerging Neolithic cultures. And the temptation is to work from the centre and look out. But it's perhaps time to take a more perspective view, which you're suggesting, which is to stand out on the landscape and look in towards the centre to see how that centre functioned in context.
Yeah, this is something that we are right now investigating here in Galicia. With this area that I was mentioning before, we are trying to see how this is seen from the outside. It is particularly relevant as you see it from other parts of the landscape, or is it hidden because it's a sacred space that you know that is there, but you are not allowed to see unless you go there. And we are trying to figure out how this movement was working, if it was on a restricted level, so to say, like 15 kilometers, or is on a much larger scale, say 50 kilometers, or is even in a much broader scale. So yeah, this is something that needs to be done, and we are trying to do it here in Galicia.
It's a brave, César, because there's lots of moving parts. For example, 50% of your data set's gone. And what I mean by that is we call them hunter-gatherers, but in reality they were hunter-gatherer fishers, because 50% of their lifestyle was fishing on the coast.
Yes.
Now, I've been a rock angler, and I know that in March we can go to this mark and we'll catch cod and pollock. I know that if we go there in April, there's nothing to be caught for 3 months, so we cross to another fishing mark. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these coastal megalithic sites would have switched on and switched off depending on seasonality.
Yeah.
And also the seasons aren't annual. The salmon is 7 years before it returns.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fascinating job to try and take these sites and put them into temporal context like you're doing. I think that's real interesting. Could I bring us back to Jordan for a moment?
Yes.
César, I'd like to ask about the Nabataeans. They were nomadic, weren't they?
Nabataeans, they were nomadic people in origin, probably with an Arab origin. That they were moving in the northwest part of the Arabian Peninsula, so to say, from the 4th say 5th century BC or so. But at some moment in the 2nd century BC, they settled down in several places. One of them is Petra, but there are many other places in the area where you have large settlements, cities built by the Nabataeans with one purpose, and it's to control the trade coming from the southern parts of Arabia into the Mediterranean. Trade of incense, that it was very much used in temples across the Mediterranean. And they were one of the people that we were controlling. It was like a monopoly for them to control all the caravan routes that they came together into Petra. And from Petra, they moved to the seaports in the Mediterranean to sell the incense in the Roman Empire.
Wow.
And but as I say, then you have these caravan routes. Of course, people were apart from them, they were nomads living in the area, as they are today. I mean, there are plenty of nomads still in the area, this is the interesting part, as I said at the beginning, no? That this is not a region where you have only this kind of people living here, but it's many different kinds of societies living at the same time, interacting together. Because on the north part of this, you have several cities. For instance, you have Geras, that is wonderful city, that it was a Greek city. With Greek people living there, speaking in Greek gods. The Decapolis, that it was one of the remains, so to say, of some of the Greek alliances of cities in the northern part of Jordan, northern part of modern Israel. They were Greek people, or even local people, but with a Greek mind, so to say, right? So, and at the same time, you have these Arab Nabataean people, you have the Jews on the east, you have the Romans. Of course, this is a melting pot. So, yeah.
Okay, so incense, I take it, would have been used primarily for the invocation and evocation of spirit within rituals, within temples. Is that the idea?
Not only. I mean, this was one of the purposes, but you could also use incense to avoid having a bad smell surrounding you.
Oh.
In any kind of environment, try to imagine, right? But it was also very much related to the kings. So if you want to have a high standard house, you need to burn incense to have a good smell. It brings the idea that you are wealthy because you can pay it. So it is not only related to religion as well, but also to this kind of, so to say, power related sphere.
Let me show you. I have it right here. So my wife has this, Cesar. This rock here.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I can't remember what it's called. The indigenous people here give everybody these rocks, and to illustrate what you've said, not that we carry bad smells with us today always, but if we go into an indigenous temple to visit, to photograph, to work, to be there, see, the second Natty and I leave, they will burn that and go all around with it, smoking it out. And it's not because we had a particularly bad smell, but they believe that every single person brings with them a different energy.
Mm-hmm.
So they cleanse before you come in and cleanse when you leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine in churches, even
God, yeah.
till now, you see the cemeteries, the big cemeteries, municipal cemeteries in Western Europe, they were only built at the, say, end of 17th, 18th century.
Sure.
Before that, the people were buried inside or next to the churches. Try to imagine the smell inside the church without the perfume of the incense inside. So this is one of the reasons to burn incense.
Oh, yes.
To have a sense of cleanliness inside the church where you go in and you don't smell, well, what you could have smelled if you don't did it.
Oh, that picture, and then add in 2 months on the Jordanian desert, on the road, sleeping with camels, and then arriving at a site.
Yeah.
You're going to need all the incense you can get from the southern countries, aren't you? Regarding the Romans that you brought up, how did archaeoastronomy, the orientation and the alignments of buildings change at the advent of Christianity in Jordan?
Yeah, very much. You see, with the Romans, what we saw is that they were practical people. They were like negotiating with locals. Okay, what you do is like this. Okay, I want that you do like that, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I adapt mine to yours. You change the name of your god. Not much. Just include Zeus or Jupiter or something, and then it's fine. You pay your taxes, and this is all. But with Christianity, everything changes. Because then, for example, what you see is that along history and very early on, you see that when you are praying on a church, you need to be facing in a particular direction. Churches are not built randomly. Churches are meant to be built with the apse, the altar, facing towards east. And the very early writings in the church, they indicate that it needs to be like that. It needs to be like that because, well, you are facing the way where Jesus Christ at the end of time is going to return, so you're facing in this direction. Okay? And one of the things that is interesting is that in many places you can read, okay, churches are facing to Jerusalem. It's wrong. I mean, if it would be like this, churches in Jordan would be facing west instead of east.
Ah, yes. Anti-canonical.
Yeah. And churches, of course, first of all, many of them, they adapt in the Roman time to the layout of the streets to a given point. If your church is going to be facing north, south, or west, then you change the direction. Mm-hmm. And then you impose the direction of the church into the layout of the city. So, okay, we are flexible, but to a given point, so to say. And this is very interesting because it's changed again with the introduction of Islam.
Oh yes, explain that.
Where you need that the mosques need to be facing Mecca.
Yes,
which is almost perpendicular to the other direction. So you can distinguish a building between a church and a mosque just through the orientation.
One of my guests was Ian Hinton, who's an English researcher that 20 years ago, he heard the myth that medieval churches in Europe were aligned to the point on the horizon where the sun rises on the day of the dedicated saint.
Yes.
He went out with his wife and surveyed 3,000 English churches over 20 years and proved that it's a load of shite, César. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen.
Yes.
95% of them are oriented east, loosely to the 90 degrees, which suggests as long as they were facing east, they adhered to canonical standards. But just as you said, when you come into urban environments, the churches were sometimes forced to face north or even west, but they would reduce the size of the church. They would do everything they could to adhere to that eastward orientation. So there isn't a great esoteric underlying plan by Rome to orient places of worship to the dedicated saint. It was much, much simpler. And you've explained that too, that human considerations perhaps had the final say on the orienteering of any building.
Yeah. And
rather than the gods.
And it's very interesting. We have just finished, a research here in Spain again on the churches in the way of St. James. all this pilgrimage route that comes all the way from France to Santiago de Compostela, where it's supposed to be the burial place of St. James. And what we have seen is that, of course, the orientation of the churches is as you say. They are facing mostly east, but there are changes. And the interesting thing is that with time, even the church is changing slightly how the churches should be built. And one moment that is very important in this particular picture is the moment of, say, the end of Renaissance in the 16th century, when you had the Council of Trento, which is a big Catholic council where all the bishops from Europe gathered together. One of the things that comes out of this is the need to reform the calendar, that is the calendar that we have now. But another thing that is much less known is that they prescribe, churches should be oriented towards east if possible. And this, if possible, at that time changes everything. Because if it is not possible, then a church can be oriented anywhere. And this happens at this moment. And for instance, if you go to Latin America, many of the churches built at the time of colonial period, they were built after this Council of Trento. Most of them are going to be built facing east, but if this was not possible, they were built north, south, or whatever, adjusting to the urban layout. And this is a very precise and defined moment that has been in the PhD thesis of a student of mine who's done a fantastic work on this.
Yeah. I live in Colombia, Cesar, so I live in the Andes and I'm surrounded by pueblos which have 16th century Spanish churches built on top of the indigenous temples.
Yeah.
And I recently talked with Tony Aveni, the renowned archaeoastronomer, and he said to me, he gave me a scoop, he said, within 6 months he's going to publish a paper that showed that colonial churches built in Mexico struggled between aligning with canonical East and aligning with indigenous sacred sites around Mexico City. And here's why. As a tool of conversion, it looks like Mexican churches were built, so the builders were virtually saying to the indigenous, okay, we're just going to change the name of what you worship, but we're going to keep the site. And look, standing at the center of our new site, you can even see your grandfather's pyramid.
Exactly.
So there's so many complexities from country to country, from intention to intention. And when conquest comes in, orientation and alignment gets fractured and distorted like never before.
Yeah.
Great, Cesar. I'm delighted we spoke about this. You've given us a real good insight into the history of archaeoastronomy in Jordan. Is there anything you think I haven't asked you that would give us a more natural place to end? Is there anything I haven't run over yet?
I would like to say, we could be talking by hours and hours if we had time, but look, one of the things that we came out with in this study, it was that it was not for sure going to be the last moment to go there or to do research there. This was done in 2011, as you mentioned, but we are still going there. We are still researching on different sites, specifically with the Nabataeans, because it's a fantastic group of monuments built by these people that they were amazing. And for instance, we are just trying to come out with results, not from Jordan, but from the north part of Saudi Arabia, where also the Nabataeans were located. And we were there last year, and it's fantastic. The area, as we said at the beginning, is such a melting pot of different people coming from different areas that is so rich that, I'm sure that we will have time to discuss many of these results at any other moment that you want.
So you are aiming to publish soon, are you?
Yeah, hopefully, yes. Next year, there might be a couple of papers on these results.
And this is going to cover everything from those two temples we talked about from 4000 BC all the way up to the time of the Nabataeans and the Romans.
Specifically on the Nabataeans and Romans, yes.
And these results are going to show archaeoastronomical alignments or not?
Yes,
yeah?
yes. I can tell you that. I'm not able to say much more.
Yeah, I was struggling at the start, César, because I was pushing you on the alignments and you were sticking to this equinox, and I thought, this guy's got something in his top pocket he's not sharing just yet. He's not mentioned solstice, lunar maximums or minimums, so I think there's a lot coming in this paper.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful, César. So what I'd like to do is just formally thank you for coming on and sharing some of the background on Jordanian archaeoastronomy. So you've really illustrated how that territory and landscape functions. So thanks very much indeed, César.
No, thank you very much to you, Leslie, and my pleasure. So I hope that we can share many more talks in the future.
Yeah, as soon as your paper's published, I'm going to read it. I'm going to send you another outline and we'll come back onto it and we'll talk about some of the things that you're quite obviously keeping secret at the moment, César.
Okay. We can do it, yes?
Okay, thank you very much.
No, thank you.